The room falls silent as President Ibrahim Traore rises from his chair, eyes locked with Elon Musk across the long conference table. The monitors behind them display devastating projections. Burkina Faso's transportation infrastructure collapsing under climate pressures, fuel shortages crippling rural communities. What was supposed to be a straightforward negotiation for discounted electric vehicles has turned into something else entirely. So that's your final answer? A 5% discount and some charging stations for Ouagadougou only? Traore's voice is calm, betraying none of the fury building inside him. Mr. Musk, you've clearly misunderstood why I'm here. The tech billionaire smirks slightly. With all due respect, Mr. President, Burkina Faso represents less than 0.01% of our global market. The arrangements I've offered are already generous considering your country's limited infrastructure. Traore nods once, then reaches for a thin folder his aide has placed before him. Then perhaps it's time I showed you what you failed to research before this meeting. 3 months earlier, Traore had stood before his cabinet with an ambitious vision, transitioning Burkina Faso away from expensive imported fossil fuels by creating the first rural electric vehicle network in West Africa. Tesla was the natural partner, with their advances in battery technology and solar integration. The initial response has been positive, his foreign minister had reported. Tesla's representatives have agreed to preliminary talks. But that optimism shattered during the first video conference. Tesla's delegation had been unprepared, asking basic questions about Burkina Faso's geography and electrical grid. One executive had even confused the country with Botswana. The promised follow-up materials never arrived. When Traore finally secured a meeting with Musk himself, after weeks of diplomatic pressure, he arrived to find the billionaire entrepreneur distracted, scrolling through his phone during Traore's presentation about his country's needs. Look, we can offer standard terms. 5% discount on fleet purchases, basic technical support, Musk had said, barely looking up. But frankly, Africa isn't our priority right now. The dismissal was clear. A young African leader from a landlocked nation was not worth the tech giant's full attention. What Musk didn't know, what few outside a small circle did know, was that before becoming Africa's youngest president at 34, Ibrahim Traore had been more than just a military officer. His engineering education in both Burkina Faso and briefly in Eastern Europe had given him a deep understanding of resource extraction and materials science. More importantly, while the world focused on Burkina Faso's political struggles, Traore had quietly commissioned a comprehensive geological survey of the nation's mineral reserves. The results were astonishing. In his hotel room the night after that disastrous first meeting, Traore conferred with Minister of Mines Ragnagwen Sawadogo. The satellite data confirms it, Sawadogo said. We're sitting on one of the largest undeveloped deposits of lithium, cobalt and rare earth elements in West Africa. Exactly what they need for their batteries. Traore nodded slowly. And they don't know. No one outside our team knows the scale, Sawadogo confirmed. The preliminary surveys from the colonial era only scratched the surface. Traore stood at the window looking out at the American city lights. Then perhaps it's time for a lesson in respect. And in doing proper research before meeting a head of state. The stakes were far greater than a fleet of discounted cars. Burkina Faso's future hung in the balance. Climate change had intensified the Sahel's droughts. Fuel costs consumed nearly 30% of rural family incomes. The nation's dependence on imported petroleum products drained precious foreign currency reserves and left remote communities vulnerable to supply disruptions. But Traore saw beyond his nation's immediate needs. The entire continent faced similar challenges. If he could establish a model for rural electrification using vehicles as mobile power sources, the template could transform African transportation. Meanwhile, Tesla faced growing pressure from Chinese manufacturers expanding into Africa with cheaper electric vehicles. The company's global battery supply chain was increasingly vulnerable to geopolitical tensions affecting Asian lithium and cobalt sources. What had begun as a simple procurement negotiation had evolved into something that could reshape both African mobility and global battery supply chains. Traore convened a secret summit of West African mining ministers in Ouagadougou. If we coordinate our mineral policies, he told them, we can transform our relationship with these tech companies. They've been extracting our resources on their terms for too long. Traore's strategy unfolded methodically. First, he leveraged his military background to tighten security around the geological survey data, ensuring no leaks reached international mining interests. Second, he dispatched trade delegates to meet with Tesla's competitors, not just Chinese EV manufacturers, but European automakers and Korean battery producers. They carried hints about Burkina Faso's mineral discoveries but no actionable details. Third, he cultivated relationships with environmental and technology journalists, sharing his vision for a distributed energy network where electric vehicles would serve as mobile power sources for rural communities. Rumors of significant mineral discoveries in the Sahel began appearing in industry publications. Tesla stock analysts noted the company's vulnerability to supply chain disruptions in their quarterly reports. When Traore requested a second meeting with Musk, the response came within hours. Most crucially, Traore assembled a team of the brightest young Burkinabe engineers and sent them for specialized training in battery technology. If his plan succeeded, he would need local expertise to maximize its benefits. "We don't just want their cars," he told his cabinet. "We want the knowledge to build our own solutions eventually." Now, in the silent conference room, Traore opens the folder and slides satellite imaging maps across to Musk. "These are the mineral deposits my country controls. Our recent geological survey confirms reserves of battery-grade lithium, cobalt, and rare earths that could supply your gigafactories for the next 15 years. He places another document on the table. "And these are the preliminary agreements I've discussed with your competitors in the last month. They're very interested in securing preferred access." Musk's expression shifts as he studies the materials. "You came unprepared to our first meeting," Traore continues, his voice level. "You treated my nation as insignificant. But I did not come here to beg, Mr. Musk. I came to offer a partnership that could secure your supply chain against Chinese dominance for a generation." He leans forward. "My proposal is simple. Burkina Faso needs 50,000 vehicles over 5 years at a 40% discount, plus charging infrastructure powered by your solar technology throughout our rural regions. In exchange, Tesla gets first negotiation rights on our mineral extraction, with guaranteed pricing for 10 years. That's. Additionally," Traore continues, "you will establish a technical training center in Ouagadougou to ensure local engineers can maintain these systems. My people will not simply be consumers of your technology. They will master it." Musk stares at the geological data, recalculating the equation. "This isn't just about Burkina Faso," Traore concludes. "I'm proposing the first node in an African transportation revolution. Succeed with us and you'll have a model to replicate across the continent. 1 billion potential customers and the mineral resources to serve them." The tech billionaire looks up, seeing Traore clearly for the first time. "I think we need to restart this conversation." 18 months later, President Traore stands at Ouagadougou International Airport as the first shipment of 5,000 Tesla vehicles rolls from cargo planes onto Burkinabe soil. Beside him, local and international press gather to document the arrival. The vehicles, specially modified for rural African conditions, will become the backbone of a distributed transportation and energy network. In the years since the agreement, the Sahel model has become a template being studied by 17 other African nations. Tesla's African division, headquartered in Ouagadougou, has become the company's fastest-growing regional operation. More importantly, the first class of 200 Burkinabe engineers has completed specialized training. They move confidently among the vehicles, explaining features to officials in their native languages. "This is just the beginning," Traore tells the assembled press. "These vehicles will connect rural communities that have been isolated for generations. They will serve as power sources for clinics and schools. And they represent African ingenuity partnering with global technology on equal terms." His phone buzzes with a message, another West African president requesting consultation on implementing a similar program. In his office at Tesla headquarters, Elon Musk studies the real-time data flowing from the newly activated Burkina Faso network, watching as the distributed battery capacity comes online across the country. The minerals now flowing from Burkina Faso's carefully managed extraction operations have already stabilized Tesla's supply chain concerns. "Sometimes," Musk tells his executives, "the most important negotiations are the ones where you discover you've completely underestimated the person across the table." In Ouagadougou, as night falls, President Traore visits the new technical training center where young Burkinabe engineers work late, already designing modifications to make the vehicles better suited for local conditions. He thinks back to that conference room in the moment when everything changed, not because he had begged or threatened, but because he had transformed a position of apparent weakness into one of strategic strength.